No, I mean, I think...
Where's Phil? Oh, well, Phil's always got mad stuff, yeah.
Oh, it's all these things.
Oh, mate.
It's also important, it's busy. Same vessel.
Phil filming it all from the space.
Okay, I guess you all know why we're here, and I think it's a testament to the impact that Vin has had on this business and yourselves, that there's so many people here, and everybody's sort of we're here to acknowledge the contribution that Vin's made to the business. I've not known Vin for very long. Well, you know, just short of 3 years, perhaps, the first time I met Vin, which actually is a very short period of time when you consider how long Vin's been here and how long a lot of you people will have known Vin. One of the things that has astounded me over the last 9 months as I've got involved with Preston is how many people have only ever had Vin as a boss, and I think that's quite extraordinary as well in this day and age to see somebody who's recruited and nurtured and developed people within a business over such a long period of time. And I think it's Preston and Pindar owes an awful lot to Vin. I recognise that in just the brief time I've been involved with the business. But I'm sure for a lot of you'll know that more than I do, and probably more than a lot of people in Pindar do. So having known Vin for just a short time, I feel that perhaps it's appropriate that I get somebody who's known him a little bit longer to say a few words about him, who can recollect a lot more about Vin and his time in printing. So I'm going to hand over to Morris.
Dish the dirt, Morris.
Well, as you know, looking around the room, there's a lot of people who've worked for Pindars and Mathers longer than I have, and have worked with Vin longer than I have here. But my time and my knowledge of Vin goes back earlier than that. I think we first met around about 1968, something like that. We both worked in Tinling to Prescott, and Vin used to travel from Preston down here, and he always vowed he'd get me back and get me doing the other journey, which he's managed to do. If going back to 1968, I mean, if you just think about that for a minute, that was before decimalisation, before colour television, before we landed on the moon. I don't mean maybe. You know, Vietnam War was still going on, and the Beatles were still making albums and stuff. So, you know, 40 years ago we're talking here. A long, long time. As I say, looking around, I can see faces of people who worked here longer. Dave, Chris, Steve Howson, the two Phils. You know, there's a lot of people who worked with Vin for longer than I have.
You see the beard one there, there's one that's been here even longer than me.
No, Paddy. Paddy's the choice. Yeah. That's right, I think you were here, you're the longest serving member, aren't you? Right. Basically, Vin and I worked together for about 5 years in Prescott, and the company we worked for was closed down, and everybody went their separate ways.
Wasn't us that closed it, wasn't our
No, we weren't involved in the company. I think Vin went up to the northeast somewhere, I went to Manchester, and we kept in touch, usually from Vin's suggestion. He would be ringing me up to see what I was doing, find out if he knew anything about somebody who'd applied for a job or whatever. So every now and again, maybe once a year, we just have the phone call, which worked in my favour eventually, because several years later I was coming out of work, and Vin rang me up and said, "Oh, I believe you're looking for a job, we've got a vacancy," and that's how I came to work for Pindar. So that goes back to 1990, I think. I think I started at the beginning of January 91. So I've worked with Vin here for about 18, 19 years now. Funny stories. One of the best ones I've ever heard of Vin was when he went to a funeral of a chap from British Rail, the old British Rail before they all changed. Bert Roper was a sales rep, and Vin and Bert went down, I think it was to South Wales, Cardiff to this funeral. So they arrived at the crematorium, and they weren't sure at the time of the service, but Bert said, "Oh, I'll recognise the people." So they're just sort of hanging around. Next thing, the funeral turns up, and Bert's going to say, "I recognise a few people from the office." So they let the people go in, and then Vin and Bert went into the back of the little crematorium. You know, you can imagine Vin, can't you? All nice and quiet, and then the minister sort of walks up and he says, "We're gathered here today to celebrate the life of our sister." And Vin gave Bert one of those looks that would have killed him, you know. Horror, you know, complete horror. They're at their own funeral. But of course, the next thing they started looking at each other and realised the funny side of it and couldn't stop laughing. So they were in the back of the crematorium laughing their heads off, and had to beat to hasty retreat outside and hid behind the bushes where they let all the. But there's a few of those stories. There's some more embarrassing ones I won't go into today.
Go on, Mark.
Later.
Careful, I've got time to speak with her.
You won't have a chance. Just going back to Vin and his attributes and when we worked with him, we'll all know that he's the first point of contact. But if anything goes wrong, we all beat a path to Vin's door, and he'll sort it out, and he'll make everything right for us. And I think he's done that over the years, and we've got to definitely owe him thanks for all of that. He's never ever shied away from a problem. He's always hit it head on, probably too fast head on sometimes. But he really takes a challenge on board, and he's like a dog with a bone. He won't let go until he's sorted it. I think we've all seen that. A challenge to Vin is like a red rag to a bull. He will run at it. One of the other things that has always impressed me about Vin is he has this gut feeling about people. He can sense if a person's right for a job, for example. Whenever we've taken anybody on in any of the departments, when I've been involved, I've always liked Vin to have a word with him beforehand, because every now and again he'll say, "There's something I'm not too sure about there," and always is right. So that is something you can't teach people. Really, we would lose that in the sack, I think. Obviously, he was responsible for a lot of the purse strings over at Preston, and he was scrupulous in the way he dealt with money. A number of times I've heard him say, "Would you spend it if it was your money? This money belongs to Mr. Pindar," and that's an expression that he uses very often. So, you know, he's been probably tight is a word I would use, just to say he hasn't overspent money that's been available on my side, and we've always been a lean company because of it, I think. And finally, I think he's always there doing things above and beyond the call of duty, and one thing that springs to mind is when I sat around his kitchen table on Boxing Day looking through proofs, several years ago, I have to say. But it's the sort of thing he does because it's got to be done. He never thinks twice about it, he just gets on with it. It doesn't ask for anything extra, it doesn't ask for anybody to pat him on the back, he just does it. And I think he's always been a loyal friend to all these people in this room here. So I'd like to wish you all the best for your future, Ben, and a long and happy retirement, and I think you deserve it. Thank you.
Well said.
I'm not going to make a long speech, I don't think I could, but thank you.
Just one more thing to say, really, and that is that I thank you from myself and from Pindar formally, but also I think I wish you that all the best in what you have in the future. Big role to replace, and I know how central you've been to this business for such a long time. So I think you're leaving Pindar with a challenge as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all right, thank you. Thanks.
Shortest speech you've ever made.
I know. It's easier for other people, very hard for yourself.
No, Ben, I thought we could